Welcome in as a Tuesday edition of College Football Smothered and Covered, powered by Locked On. As you can see, back from Dublin, back in the home studio, and back for you on this game week for week one. Hey, you know what? Thank you for making College Football Smothered and Covered, powered by Locked On, your first listen every single day. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we are on YouTube as well. We're part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. And of course, today we are presented by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on. That's FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Okay. It's Big 12 day. We've gone through the ACC and the SEC. We did that last week before I left for Dublin. We did the Big 10 while I was in Ireland. And now, post jet lag, we're going to finish it up in the Power 4. We are going to go with the Big 12. We're going to have a predicted order of finish. We're then going to have game-by-game predictions in the second block. And then a Big 12 story that is quite frustrating. As a guy who's done this, who's been in the media for over 20 years, 22 years now, there are certain things that I like. There are certain things that I'd like to change. We talked about that with the Charles Lester thing on Sunday, but there's another thing that's gone on in the Big 12 that I'm not happy about. But what I am happy about is these. Big 12 predictions. Big 12 predictions. I've got Oklahoma State 11-1, 8-1 in the conference. I've got them beating Utah 10-2, 7-2, just on the outside of the college football playoff race, incidentally. I've got Oklahoma State over Utah in the Big 12. And if you're listening and not watching on YouTube, you should do both. But I'm going to list all these down from there. Kansas State 9-3, 6-3 in the conference. TCU 8-4, 6-3 in the conference. UCF 8-4, 6-3 in the conference. West Virginia 8-4, 6-3 in the conference. Kansas at 7-5 and 5-4. Iowa State at 6-6 and 4-5. Texas Tech at 7-5, 4-5. Arizona at 7-5, 4-5. Baylor at 6-6, 3-6. BYU 5-7, 3-6. Cincinnati 5-7, 3-6. Houston 4-8, 3-6. Arizona State 4-8, 1-8. Colorado 3-9 and 1-8. Okay, I guess first things first, let's talk a little bit about the numbers that you heard, because if you were paying close attention, you heard a lot of the same exact conference record predictions. And it goes back to something that I am extremely excited about in the Big 12, and that is it's going to be the best conference in America in terms of week-to-week intrigue. Last year, that was the Pac-12. 2 years ago was actually the Big 12. It's the Big 12 again, because I can sit here and say Oklahoma State over Utah in the Big 12 championship game. You can also say, dude, you're an idiot. And A, you're always right. But B, specifically in this case, you will have a very good argument, because there are 5, 6, 7 teams, I think, in the Big 12 that have a chance to win this conference. It is the most fascinating conference in America. So if you want exciting football, I mean, not the best football, but exciting football on a week-to-week basis, you become a Big 12 fan. You become a Big 12 fan because it is going to be absolutely tremendous. We're going to start at the top with my Big 12 championship game prediction, specifically Oklahoma State. Now, if you watched last week, you saw that I had Oklahoma State number 4 in the college football playoff predictions, the only Big 12 team. Now, what I will say is that Utah on the outside looking in, the debate in my standings, in my playoff predictions, was Alabama or Utah. I mean, honestly, Utah might be a better team, but Alabama's got that name recognition that does matter, and that's going to be a reason why Utah doesn't get in. However, I think Utah, if Cam Rising is healthy, and that's an if because he's been hurt a lot. But if Cam Rising is healthy, that team is capable of making a playoff. That team is actually capable of making a deep run into the playoff. But Oklahoma State, I'm more confident in. Why? This has Mike Gundy special written all over it. Now, what is a Mike Gundy special, you might ask? It's when he has veterans. 2 years ago, kind of one thing. Back in 2011, when they should have gotten into the BCS championship game, I think at the time they had a better resume over Alabama. Now, obviously, Alabama was a better overall team, but the same thing with that team. Whedon was good. They had great secondary play. You're going to get a lot of that same veteran experience in a conference where it means much more than it does maybe in other conferences. You have basically 5, maybe even 6 offensive linemen returning in terms of returning starters throughout the course of their years. You have the best player in college football in Ollie Gordon III toting the rock. You've got a veteran wide receiving core. You've got a quarterback in Alan Bowman. Is he going to win the Heisman? No, of course not. Is he capable of being an above average quarterback, an elite quarterback in specific cases with this supporting cast? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. And then you look defensively, just returning starter all over the place. And you've heard me say this. I'm not the biggest returning starter guy if those players suck. These players don't. They were pretty good defensively last year. They've got a dude at running back who's the best player in college football. So I love Oklahoma State. Is Oklahoma State a team that can go out there and win you a college football playoff? No. If they get a bye, would they lose that college football playoff game against whoever they play? Probably. They can get there. They can get there. Now, I think with Oklahoma State, you have to worry about the upsets, but that's true all across this. Like Kansas State, I love Avery Johnson. I think they'll be able to run the rock. You want to make a case for Kansas State? I'm all ears. TCU, I'm not as sold on, but I want to specifically point out the 5th and 6th teams that I have in my Big 12 predictions. UCF at 8-4, 6-3, and West Virginia at 8-4 and 6-3. Let's start with UCF. What do we know about Gus Malzahn? When he has a dual threat quarterback, especially a dual threat quarterback who is a run threat up the middle, then he is extremely dangerous. And that's exactly what he has in quarterback KJ Jefferson. When Gus Malzahn looks at KJ Jefferson, he sees Cam Newton all over the place. Now, is KJ Jefferson Cam Newton? Of course not. Could Gus install the same kind of offense that he did at Auburn with Cam Newton? Abso-freaking-lutely. And in the Big 12, in this Big 12, that'll play. That'll play in a very, very big way. So I'm looking at UCF thinking, okay, you spring an upset here or there, or you avoid the pothole here or there, yeah, you can get to the Big 12 championship. And if they get there, certainly capable of putting together 60 good minutes, as are the West Virginia Mountaineers. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, and I see Neil Brown on some of these hot seat lists. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Neil Brown's not on the hot seat. He got off the hot seat last year. Anybody who paid attention to West Virginia football last year knows just how good Garrett Green is, knows just how good Neil Brown is as a head coach, and sees a defense that fits perfectly into forcing turnovers, aggressive dudes all over the place. Now, the schedule could get West Virginia. There's no doubt. But you go look at some of these websites, some of these odds boards, West Virginia's way down on the Big 12 championship race. I don't get it. I don't get it for 1 second. Garrett Green is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Now, he's got a new quarterbacks coach. You have to deal with that, but that's okay. We had Neil Brown on this show a few months ago, and he's very excited about how things have progressed. He feels like Garrett Green has taken another big step in this offense, and I agree with him. And NFL scouts have started to notice. NFL scouts have seen Garrett Green and they've put him in the same rankings as Garrett Nussmeier, as some of these other quarterbacks, Connor Wegman, guys who might not be household names, but can become household names in the future. So if you're looking for dark horses for the college football playoff, think of West Virginia. Think of West Virginia. Because is that team good enough to get to Arlington? Abso-freaking-lutely it is. Is it good enough to put 60 good minutes on the board in Arlington? Abso-freaking-lutely it is. So you're going to see teams bounce up and down these odds boards for the next 2-3 days. It's going to happen a lot because you're going to see injuries, you're going to see depth charts, you're going to see all this stuff, right? Keep an eye on West Virginia, because making a run at the college football playoff is not as outlandish as it seems. Now, if the Mountaineers get to the college football playoff, they're going to get their asses kicked. Sorry, Mountaineers fans. It's the truth. But you get there, you're living right. And they've got a big chance to make a big statement in week 1 when they host Penn State. Could that be the game that wakes everybody up to the Mountaineers? We'll do our picks later in the week, but I think you know which way I am headed. As you can see, I'm full of energy today. You know why? Well, one thing is because I've been up forever because I'm still on Dublin, Ireland time. But I also had a 5-hour energy before going to the gym this morning. And buddy, I am jacked. I got that feeling like when I got to the gym, like, let's go run a marathon. Let's go do it. Now, I've never run a marathon or a half marathon, but I have run 8 miles and I felt like running 8 miles. Now, I didn't because I had to come back and join you guys, talk to you guys on this beautiful Tuesday. It gives you a shot of alertness and energy you need to get in the zone. And good Lord, buddy, I am in the zone. Zero sugar and a convenient portable size is the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore: watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and more. Try them all on the site. You have an option to build your own 12 or 24 pack. You choose the flavors, and you know what? They come right to your door. My front door is right outside my studio. They'll come right there. They'll come right there. I also get cat litter there. I get some dog food. There's all kinds of stuff, but I can't wait until the 5-Hour Energy gets there because I might have to have one tomorrow morning too, because this one is working great. If you go to 5hourenergy.com and that's the number 5, 5hourenergy.com. Get 5% hours. You can get your product today. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB. Receive 20% off your order. This order is only valid through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com. That's 5, the number 5, hourenergy.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB. You'll get 20% off your order. We're also brought to you by Ultimate College Football HC. Look, I downloaded this app and, man, I was playing it a lot on the 8-hour plane ride. I watched movies too. I watched 4 movies. Varsity Blues, Office Space, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and The Social Network. But you know what I was doing in the process? I was playing Ultimate College Football HC. It's an amazing game. Simulation step you right in the shoes of a head coach and lead your team to college football glory. Can you imagine being the head coach of, I don't know, Colorado? We're going to talk about them in a minute because they got to win some games. And you can basically do anything. You're responsible for calling offensive plays. Your strategy can determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of the program. Basically, you have every detail of the program right there at your fingertips. It's completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. You can play on the go, wherever you want, whenever you want. And of course, we have a special offer for you guys. Why wouldn't we have a special offer for you guys? Go to Locked On Your Team, whatever team. What do you want? My team is college football. But the Locked On Podcast Network has teams all over the place. You can use them as well. Use the promo code Locked On CFB. Locked On CFB, all caps. It's very important that you do all caps. Use it inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as it will get your team off to a strong start. To download the game, just go to ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up in the App Store. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Do it today, not tomorrow. Do it today. Speaking of today, we're going to look at game-by-game predictions for the Big 12. Now, if you're listening, I'm going to only go through a few of these. But if you're watching, you can see this very ugly, very uncreative helmet schedule with the letter W and the letter L inside every single square. So I want you to go look 6 squares down. That is Colorado. 3-0 start, everybody jumped on the Buffaloes last year, the casual sports fan, like, oh my God, Deion's going to win a national championship or even go to a bowl game. And those of us who watch college football on an hour-to-hour basis, we're like, dude, there's no friggin' way. Nobody on that team can block. And what do we see? Shedeur Sanders, who is a mobile quarterback, finished the season like negative 60-something in rushing yards because he got sacked so much. That's how bad that offensive line was. So let's go through Colorado. North Dakota State on a Thursday. I put a win in the column for Colorado on North Dakota State. Could you convince me that that's not going to happen? Absolutely, you can convince me that it's not going to happen. But for the sake of, and here's how big a deal this is. I have them at 3-9 and winning that game and winning a Big 12 game. Even that might be aggressive. You're going to get smoked by Nebraska in week 2. I have them winning Colorado State in week 3 at Colorado State. Just because, like, whatever. Lost to Baylor, lost to UCF, lost to Kansas State, lost at Arizona. I gave them a win against Cincinnati, and that would be a pretty significant upset. And then losses all the way out at Texas Tech, Utah, at Kansas, and then Oklahoma State. We'll talk a little bit about what that would do from a media perspective in the next segment. But for this segment, let's talk a little bit about what that would mean for Colorado as a program. 3-9 is a step back, right? The answer is yes. On paper, for sure. In proper context, yeah. Because Deion was supposed to bring the spotlight in a positive way, like he did in September of last season, like he's done over the past 2 off seasons, both for the transfer portal to get players and also just general media coverage. Because even if it's slightly negative, it is still good for the program because nobody in the planet talked about Colorado up until Deion got there. However, a 3-9 season, even if there's another conference win in that mix like there was last year when they were in the Pac-12, that's regression. That is regression. And at the end of the season, you're going to start talking about Colorado as a joke, as a lot of people already are, myself included. Somebody else is too. Again, next segment, we'll talk about that. So what happens if Colorado is, like, what happens with the administration if it becomes a national joke as opposed to just simply being in the national spotlight? Could you see Deion just saying, screw it, I'm out? I could see Deion saying, screw it, I'm out. He's never faced criticism before. And if it's 2 years of being bad, horrendous, a subpar team that should be ranked in about the 100s nationally among the 134, are transfer players going to come anymore? Are you going to be able to recruit high school players? No and no. So it'll be fascinating to see what Rick George does if my prediction comes to fruition or if he's just a little bit better, or God forbid, he's worse, which is extremely possible considering I have a win over North Dakota State, which I'm not sold on at all, and a win over Cincinnati, which I'd have no idea why. It's weird stuff happens in college football. That's just kind of how things go. All right, more on the game by game predictions. Kansas State. My losses for Kansas State are to Oklahoma State. We already talked about them. At West Virginia, we already talked about them. And then at Iowa State at the end of the season. The Iowa State thing is interesting because part of the reason I have this is you're going to be sitting there as Kansas State with 2 losses going kind of in the playoff hunt right here. We're kind of in the playoff hunt right here. How do we handle this? And what do we know about Ames? What do we know about Ames? Well, it ain't easy. It ain't. So, how are they going to handle this? I'm going to pucker up a little bit. Going to be really, really hard to get this job done. So that's why I think Kansas State might be one of those teams, even though I have them 3rd in the Big 12, might be one of those teams that when all is said and done, might have one of those late season collapses that opens the door for a lot of other teams in the college football playoff. Hey, the show brought to you by Ibotta. I can tell you right now, my wife uses Ibotta all the time. All the time. In the summertime, it's cookout season. She'd go get all the materials. We'd do the thing up on my grill outside. I would go to the local supermarket. I would use Ibotta when I got lump coal for my Big Green Egg. Use it all the time. It's a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation. And there's a lot of that, no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. That's true. And that flight you've been eyeing or that fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't really amount to much. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw from your bank account, PayPal, or gift card. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, money's right there for you. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, we're off. Ibotta is using our listeners $5 for just trying to use Ibotta using Locked On College. When you register, $5 for just using Locked On College. When you register, just go to the App Store, Google Play Store, and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use the promo code Locked On College. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in your App Store, your Google Play Store, and use code Locked On College. All right. Deion, more Deion. All Deion all the time, huh? All right. We've heard about this for we heard about this. I heard about this in Dublin. I didn't get a chance to get around to it, but Paul Feinbaum, who's a friend of mine, commented on Deion banning a columnist from the Denver Post from asking questions, not from press conferences, but just from asking questions. And Paul said this: Coach Prime is showing he is not ready for prime time. I find this whole thing disgraceful. Treating reporters like this seems like we're in some sort of autocratic country. This is not America. I find him to be a bully and a hypocrite. I do too. When's the last time Deion faced criticism for not being successful? When he was at the Cincinnati Reds, maybe? Maybe some murmurings when he was with the Yankees, because it sure as hell wasn't his football career, right? It's been a long time. So when you're not only failing, but failing in a big way, You get in your head a little bit. Your confidence is shaken. And what happens when people lose their confidence? They compensate. They overcompensate. And that's exactly what's happening here with Deion Sanders. He is not ready for the criticism that is coming his way. He's not ready for what will happen this year if things go downhill again, and he knows it. That's the biggest thing, is he knows it. You can sit there and have confidence in your team going into the season. But when things get close or you actually start playing games, you can't hide weakness. And I think Deion is heading into this North Dakota State game knowing that there are weaknesses on his team. It's the same thing that Mike Norvell had at Florida State. We heard murmurings going in to game week that there were issues with DJ Uiagalelei, and he was not in tune with the wide receivers. And what'd you see? Mike Norvell protected him. He tried to coach around him, not just from DJ, but also the wide receivers. That's just how things were. So I think when this comes down to it, if they do go, I don't know, 3-9 or 4-8, people start asking questions, legitimate questions. Now, columnists start asking questions, and a lot of times they exist to get a rise out of the subject. Like, that's, if you're a columnist, that's different than being a beat reporter. Beat reporters, news columnists have opinions. And so I think it's clear that this writer, Denver Post Sean Keeler, already has an opinion. And not only does Deion know about it, but the SID and the media relations department knows about it too. So this is not just a Deion thing. This is something that had been discussed. And that's what's interesting, is that the arrogance that Deion Sanders has is now filtering through the athletic department, specifically the communications department. This is only going to make things worse. Because what happens now that we know that Deion has thin skin? As somebody who's been doing this for 22 years, I can tell you exactly what happens. We smell blood in the water, and what we smell, the blood in the water, actually gives us better content because there's validity, because there's meat on that bone. So this is the worst possible scenario for Deion. And if he loses to North Dakota State or to Colorado State in week 3, or they just simply go 3-9 or 4-8, which is what they went last year, the amount of pressure that will be on Deion will be something like he's never felt before. And yes, he's played football. Yes, he's played baseball at an elite level. But he's never been in a situation where the expectation was as high as Mount Everest, but the production is as low as the Grand Canyon. So it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. Hey, for your second listen, why don't you go over to the Locked On College Football Podcast? From NIL deals to never-ending college realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link, Locked On College Football, in your podcast description below, so you don't need to search. Just part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And speaking of every day, we're going to have another podcast every day. We're going to do a mailbag later in the week. So if you have some questions, you can leave them in the chat, text me, DM me, look it up on YouTube, write a comment, all that stuff. Whatever your questions are, we'll do that later in the week. We'll also make picks for the weekend. Until then, have a great, great Tuesday, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.